Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So this one is a kind of in-between check-in. And the reason I say that is because I decided that I was going to film my reactions to this series because it's just so intense reading this right now, especially with the current climate that is happening in the States. It's more about enjoying our books and living in that world. But I have been reading the series Scythe. Now, two of those books are sitting right there. You can see Scythe on the bottom of this shelf right here. You can see that there are a bunch of books sitting there. So you have the Once Upon a Broken Heart, then you have the Caramel trilogy, and then right underneath that you have Scythe. Now, Scythe is such a great book, such a great young adult book. Ripped my heart out, made me feel really, really scared for what's coming in the future, and somehow just to hit home just a little too hard, but I loved every second of it. So Scythe is basically this story that is following the idea of a utopian society where in this utopian society you have human beings who have now overcome death, so natural causation of death such as injuries, accidents, disease, aging, all of those things have now been combated, and people have nanoparticles or nanites inside of their system that can basically reset the entire human body. So for example, let's say you're a 95-year-old man and you think you're on your deathbed and you're going to pass away. Well, you can just click this button and these nanites reset you back to being 15. You hold on to all your memories that you had going through the age of 95. You remember everything that your body went through, but now you have been transported back into your 15-year-old self vitality while still maintaining that wisdom and that capacity. So humankind is miles and miles ahead. And in this sphere that they are living in, there are two different sanctioned groups that are basically in the world. You have the humans who are, as we speak, humans. They go about doing their day-to-day life. They still have jobs. They still have, questions of job security. They still have homes. They still have lives. But everyone's kind of at peace. And then you have the Scythes. The Scythe is basically a group of individuals who have been selected to maintain the population so that the world is not overwhelmed. Now, it's not just humans that are developed this way and have the nanites and everything in their system. You also have animals that also function within this sphere. So in the first book, Scythe, you have a bunch of these people who are Scythes, who are basically given the permission to remove human life. And they have to do this in a non-biased way, in a respectful way, in a quota-based way, so they're not overstepping their boundaries or their powers. And in return for every life that they gleam, is what they call it. Gleaming is when someone is officially dead and beyond repair. Then you give immunity to the family for a year, and therefore they are now protected. Now the book starts off following this one particular Scythe who is known to be, someone of very high respect. He is someone that honors the codes that was present when the Scythedom was brought into place. He has a full understanding of conscience. He takes every human life as being precious, and he just wants to offer them the respect and peace they deserve when they are laid to rest. And during this process of what he's doing, he happens to meet two kids who show him that they also have very powerful conscience and believe in humanity and believe in the soul and believe in doing these things for the right reasons and are truly kind-hearted people. So he takes them on as apprentices. Now, in the new world order of Scythes, you have people who are extremely power-hungry. Now, murderers and torture and all this kind of stuff is gone in the world. That aspect of the planet has been wiped out. Everyone's at peace, and I'll get to that in just a second. But the Scythes are tasked with this job of gleaming. So now all of a sudden you have this power-hungry Scythe who decides that it's okay to kill whenever he wants, and he loves and enjoys mass gleamings. He loves going around murdering all these people and basically trying to say I deserve all the power and I deserve this ability to make these crazy decisions. And it's an absolute insane situation that's happening. So you have some Scythes that understand him because they're kind of like, okay, but it's like a purging, it's like a purification, and it's like we're not targeting anyone in particular, and we're doing these because, you know, if certain people who enjoy gleaming gleam more than the Scythes that don't like to gleam and don't want to take away life, they have the opportunity to stay calm and chill and whatever. And somehow these two kids get mixed up into this mess, and the book progresses from there. Now, that's all I'm really going to share because I don't want to give too much away about this first book. But when I tell you this book hit home and this book was hard to read, I am not kidding. It was such a good book. As a healthcare worker as well, like just knowing what we've seen as a human population globally with COVID and all these other things that we've gone through, and now with what's going on in the country currently, it's just crazy to think of a world where disease is no longer an issue and everyone has, you know, protection and equality and everyone lives in peace and is harmonious. But then you also have, like, you know, this world that is protected. Oh, one layer I forgot to explain. So for all the humans that remain outside of the Scythedom, you also have something called the Thunderhead. And the Thunderhead is basically an all-powerful AI system, if you will, that is basically tasked with keeping peace on Earth. And most humans have gotten so comfortable with that presence that they almost treat it as a conscience or a guide, and they never want to irrevocably damage their relationship with Thunderhead. Now, you do have some humans who just continue to rebel and they are marked as unsavory. These are individuals that still have areas in their life where they can go act out their wildest dreams and just be absolutely abject miserable and hate on life, but do it in a safe and contained way where it's not harming society. Meanwhile, the rest of the people go about their day-to-day life. They're happy, they're pleasant, they're chill, they're just living their lives. And then you have the Scythes who are tasked with this insane power, almost like a governing body, that basically gets to choose and pick who lives, who dies, but they do it with a sense of decorum. And then you have this new order Scythe Goddard, who is basically the primary villain of the series, who basically comes in as a tyrant. It's intense. It's a lot of craziness happening in the book. So all I want to say is that these books are so good. They're so well written. I don't know what Neil Shusterman was thinking when he was writing these books, but they're beautiful. And they're so apt for this time. I just think it's a fascinating read. It is, however, extremely excruciating and painful to read because it just feels, like so pertinent. And I have to say the first book, it was definitely a 4-star read for me. In the second book, which is called Thunderhead, now we have the voice of the actual Thunderhead in this book as well. So in the first book, you understand this construct exists, but you don't actually get to hear its side of the story and like what's going on. In the Thunderhead, you do. You also get introduced to a new group of characters called the Toll. The Toll is a character name. Hold, please. Tonists. I think they're called Tonists. They're basically people who want to go back to the old ways. They want to go back to when humans still face disease, and they want to go back to how things used to be, and they want to go back to that reliance on self and like nature rather than on these sites and all these other things. So they're like considered a cult organization in a way. So you're introduced to them, and then the Thunderhead in and of itself also has its own personality, its own voice. So it starts speaking its mind, and you kind of get to see how it's thinking and how its primary goal is to just allow humanity to flourish, but it's also got its hands tied because there's only so much that it can do and say. And then when it comes to the Scythedom, it has absolutely no bearing, no ruling whatsoever. So whatever the Scythedom does, this Thunderhead cannot intervene because of the way that it's been programmed. So it's a very fascinating construct that's being done. Then you also get introduced to this idea that there is an island, there is a place that is outside of the jurisdiction of the Thunderhead. Basically, there's no cameras there, there's no technology there, so it doesn't know what's going on in that area. This area has also been lost to the Scythedom, so nobody really knows where this is, and now you have a couple of characters who are trying to discover this location. There's also like bids for power that are going on within the Scythedom, and you definitely get to see like that transition happening and what's going on there in terms of like even the judicial system of the Scythe, and like it's just very fascinating. Elections are taking place. It's a very interesting, intriguing thing, and then crazy things happen. Currently I'm on the third book in the series, which is called The Toll, and it's very, very interesting. It's spanning very quickly over the course of many, many years. I have probably about an hour to an hour and a half left in the book, which means, excuse me, I'm probably about, 2/3 of the way through this book, and it is thick. This third book is the thickest of the 4 books, and it's quite fascinating because now you have different power plays taking place, and you have different characters that are involved in the storyline, and you have different plot twists that are getting thrown. You have an anarchist who's doing his own thing. You have a new age Scythe who actually represents like what the Scythedom is and what it could be and what it could evolve to be, that like truly speaks to what the purpose of it was, and like this idea of human conscience and human respect. Then you have, our evil guy who is basically running around rampant saying I should be allowed to be a mass murderer and kill as many people as I want because that's what my job is and I love doing my job. It's like, okay, sir, whatever you say. He's now trying to reintroduce concepts of bias and racism and sexism and all this other stuff that has been eradicated. Then you have the Thunderhead, which is just trying to protect humanity, and it realizes as it continues to hold humanity's hand that humanity will continue to suffer. So it's just like a mass reckoning that takes place. And then you have these Tonists who are basically saying that they want things to go back to the norm, and they are the only ones who really remember what it was like to survive without the AI or without the technology, because they've been doing it as a cult religion for so long. It's just such a fascinating read, guys. It's so good. Neil Shusterman did a phenomenal job. I think this young adult series is very beautifully written. It's very, very interesting. It's very fascinating, and I'm definitely curious to see where the third book continues to take me. I just read a scene where something massive happens, and it's just so sad to read, and you're just like, I was actively like holding tears back at the coffee shop while I was reading this book, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like someone could be that cruel. And it was a very powerful hit. So I did take a break from the book. It is one of those books where I feel like if you're extremely emotional or you connect with these characters, it can be a little bit difficult, especially like I said, in the current climates of things, like depending on which way you lean or what you're looking at or whatever you're dealing with in your sphere of the universe. So if you're looking for a book that's going to let you have happy, fuzzy feelings, and it's going to make you warm inside, and it's going to make you gooey, and it's going to make you, feel happy and just joyful to be alive, I wouldn't say that's necessarily these books, but if you want books that are going to make you think and are very interesting and like very sci-fi, futuristic, dystopian novels, these are definitely the way to go. That being said, first book was solid 4-star for me. The second book was also a 4-star for me. Third book so far is shaping up to be like closer to a 4.5. So we'll see. But this is an absolutely solid read, and it is definitely making me feel the feels. And once again, that is for Scythe, written by Neil Shusterman. Would strongly recommend if anyone is looking into getting into that series. It's so good, and I'm so glad I'm finally delving into that series. So that's been fun. So I finished The Toll, and as I had mentioned before, some massive things had happened up until that point of the book. So to give a little bit more information and kind of wrapping this up a little bit more, because I realized as I was watching back my earlier reactions in the video, I was very, very vague. The main aspects of this book is that there's basically 3 different groups, if you will. You have the Scythes, who are completely separate, and they're the ones who basically control human population, life and death, basically. Then on the other spectrum, you have normal humankind who are going about doing their day-to-day life, and they're the ones that hear the voice of the Thunderhead, who is basically there to guide them and support them as they make their decisions in their life. And the Thunderhead is an AI system that has been created to maintain human life with still giving human beings a sense of freedom of will or whatever. Then you have the Tonists. So the Tonists is the religious group that basically believes in going back to the quote unquote mortal ages when people still died of natural causes. And they believe that that is the natural order of the world. They believe that things should go back to the way that it was. So they feel like, having no control over death per se is a good thing. And within the Tonist groups, you have various classes. Now, the other thing that I hadn't mentioned about these books is talking a little bit more about Goddard. So Goddard is basically our main evil character. he's part of the new group of Scythedoms that believe in massive killing, and he believes in gleaming and taking joy in gleaming. So he believes that, as a Scythe, it is your duty to take great joy in what you do. And basically what he wants to do is he's like, let me take on more deaths. And that way, by, bringing on more death, I can reduce the amount of deaths that other Scythes have to carry if they believe that taking a life is challenging and difficult for them. So it's a very interesting conundrum. At the end of the second book, there was a vote that occurs, and he does some things to make sure that the vote swings his way. So he is now the head of all of America, or basically the North American continent, and he's basically making regulations and laws that he would like to be seen worldwide. Meanwhile, you hear about how the Texas sect is kind of doing its own thing. They're like, you do you, we're gonna do us, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. We have some characters that are believed to be dead who are coming back to the living, and they are very important characters. I had also mentioned briefly that at the beginning of this book, there is an island that is outside of the jurisdiction of the Thunderhead. It is not aware that this area exists, and the Scythes are aware of this place, but have kind of forgotten through lore where this place might exist. So in this book, they do end up finding that island, and it is discovered by one of our main characters, Scythe Faraday, who was one of the main characters in the first book and continues to be so throughout the entire series, as well as an engineering scientist, librarian type of very strong female lead character that he takes with him to find this island. On approaching this island, everybody kind of has different ideas of what they want to do. They also inadvertently let the Thunderhead know that this area exists outside of its jurisdiction, and they're like, oh, what are we going to do about this? So it's really, really interesting to see how the Thunderhead responds to that information too, because at the foremost of it all, the Thunderhead is truly supposed to be this entity that cares about humanity's success and humanity's growth. And at the end of the second book, it basically takes every single human being and says, I'm no longer holding your hand, but simultaneously is working on a project to try to ensure that human life continues. It's a very fascinating scenario that's happening. In the midst of all this, you have the two main renegade characters who were kind of introduced in the first book, who are the apprentices of the Scythe in this book, and that would be Rowan and Citra. They have since completed their training and kind of are in a different phase of their life, and they're basically trying to rectify the situation of the corrupt Scythedom from within. And one approaches it with a very peaceful manner and tackling it through laws and things like that. And the other one is basically taking it from the perspective of violence and basically removing the Scythes that are basically corrupt. It's a very fascinating character dynamic, and the only thing that kind of grounds them and keeps them both human is their love for each other and their conscientiousness about respecting the value of life. So it's a very interesting time period. Now, as this book progressed, we also are introduced to a character. His name is Grayson. Grayson was a normal human being that wanted to basically be employed to assist the Thunderhead carry out any laws and regulations. He firmly believed in the beauty of the Thunderhead and what it represented. And the Thunderhead basically tasks him with a special task force. And at the end of the second book, the Thunderhead, that is, declares that humanity is basically too coddled. And so he basically says he won't talk to any human beings anymore. And the only person he's still talking to is Grayson. Now, the reason this is important is one of the other sects that were kind of discussed was the Tonists. And the Tonists believe in the toll, the thunder, and the tone. And so the tone is believed to be when the Thunderhead basically breaks connection with all of humanity. The thunder is, of course, the Thunderhead itself. And then the toll would be the prophesied speaker who is going to come back and reestablish balance among all of humanity. And Grayson is kind of the character that ends up taking on that role because the Thunderhead will only speak to him. He's the only human being that still has connection with the Thunderhead. Now, one other sect of people should be described in this, and that would be the unsavories. So unsavories are basically characters that ended up in a position where they are no longer in favor with the Thunderhead because of poor choices that they've made. They can go back to being a regular citizen if they correct their behaviors, but otherwise they're basically placed on the outskirts of humanity where they can work through their issues of anger, frustration, whatever it may be, in a safe environment where it doesn't harm other people, but it also allows them to experience their rage. I think the beauty of the Thunderhead in general in these books is that it really shows just how well developed this AI system is and how much it truly appreciates and values humanity and how it wants to continue that human race in a very safe manner. The end of this book I thought was absolutely brilliant. I thought it was really, really fascinating. Basically, it also talks about colonization, life outside of Earth, things like that. It's a very, very, very well written, fast-paced book. I also think the ending was well done in the sense that the way that Goddard's power is stripped was really fascinating. Where Rowan and Citra end up is really interesting. Where Faraday, Marie Curie, like some of these other Scythes that are good Scythes, where they end up was really interesting. Seeing how the Tone ends up, finding his human nature again and becoming Grayson again, that was really fascinating. The Thunderhead's reconnection with humanity was really interesting. And basically the Tonist sect, what happens to them was also really fascinating. I think overall it's really cool the way the book is written. I think power politics between various characters, regardless of their background, was also very well described in this book. Biases and this hunger for power and the power plays that human beings are willing to do in order to get it was quite fascinating. So that was really lovely. You also read a little bit more about the history of the Scythedom, both the good and the bad, and you kind of get a little bit more of a feel of how people might have gotten corrupt and ended up in positions of power that they're in. So I thought that backstory was also very well done in The Toll. This one is the thickest book of the three, but definitely was wonderful. And I know I said it was shaping up to be a 4.5, but I think this one actually made it all the way to a 5 for me. We're 4.75, I should say. It was, I think, very well written, really talks about humanity as a whole, definitely had like me on the edge of the seat in terms of the sci-fi and the dystopian world and where, the story was going to take us. But overall, I do think this series was an excellent read. These are the 3 books that makes up the series, and this is all you would need to read if you wanted to finish the main storylines of the Scythe arc. Now, a little bonus book that was also written is Gleanings. Gleanings is basically a little novella that basically captures stories that happened in the world of the Scythedom. And it's basically mini stories. The other fun thing about this book is it's not just Neil Shusterman who wrote this book. He actually collaborated with other authors as well in order to come up with some of these chapters, which I thought was really fun. So he actually wrote along with David Yoon, Jared Shusterman, Sophia Lapuente, Michael H. Payne, Michelle Nolden, and Joelle Shusterman in order to tell us more about the Arc of Scythe. One chapter in particular that really spoke to me in this book was about a Scythe and his dog, which I thought was really, really funny. And like this question mark of who was truly the master in that situation. There was another story in here that tells us the entire story of Goddard and how he became the way he became. That was also really interesting to read, and how he became under Xenocrates' power, who used to be the head blade of America. Then, it also tells little stories of what happens with the Thunderhead and the Thunderhead's plan for the future after the end of The Toll. So that was really fun to read. In general, I just think this is a great little novella to read. It has a lot of different fun aspects to it. It also talks about Citra's younger brother, Ben, and his story and what happens to him after she ends up becoming under the apprenticeship of the Scythedom and becomes Scythe Anastasia. So in general, I just think the books are very well written. This one's more fun. It's more fast paced. It's like little stories that you're just getting tidbits of, which was very enjoyable. I ended up giving this book a solid 4 stars because I just really enjoyed the closure that it gave in terms of some of the main characters. But I also loved the fact that it kind of gave you a little bit of history of the Scythedom as well as the future of the Scythedom and what humanity is becoming at the end of the series. So overall, I would say the Scythe series is quite excellent. I would give it a solid 4 stars in terms of a series as a whole, probably actually even closer to a 4.5 for a series as a whole. I think there's a lot of depth to it. I think the storyline is written well. The sci-fi is done very well. The stakes are done very well. The characters are very easy to love or hate depending on who the character is. And I just think it's one of those storylines that really keeps you on the edge of your seat. You really want to keep reading it. So would definitely recommend this series. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday. I basically put out anything on bookish related content with a little spattering of randomness here and there, such as travel blogs, book hauls, book video. Well, no, book hauls would still be under book videos, but like hauls randomly, or travel vlogs, what's in my bag, things like that. But mostly books. So if you do feel like you would enjoy bookish content, then definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell. For those of you that are returning, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for all of your support. It means the world to me, and I'm so glad to be able to share all of these wonderful books with you. I think our bookish community is a beautiful thing, and it's just so nice to have like-minded people together to be able to appreciate the joy that is books. That being said, whether it's morning, evening, or night, wherever you are, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't thank you enough for being here, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye, guys.